This video is for the literal equations foldable notes. So the front side looks like this. Okay, so in literal equations, a lot of literal equations are formulas. And what we have to do sometimes is rearrange the formula. So when we work with literal equations, that's all we're doing is we're just rearranging the pieces in the formula. So the first row here says, in the following linear equation, solve for y. The goal is to get y on one side of the equal sign by itself. So anytime that it tells you to solve for this letter or solve for this, you want that letter or that number on one side of the equal by itself. So the literal equation that we're going to solve is this one, 2x minus 3y equals 9. And I want to get y by itself. So the very first thing that I'm going to do is subtract 2x from both sides of the equal sign. So again, I want to get everything away from y. So the 2x's cancel. I'm left with a negative 3y equals, I didn't touch the 9, and I just subtract 2x from that side. All right, so now I'm looking at the y. I need to get this negative 3 away from it. And that negative 3 is being multiplied by the y. So to get rid of it, I do the opposite. I divide both sides by negative 3. So what I'm left with is a fraction, and we try not to leave things like this in fraction form. So I've got just the y over here. So I'm going to split this up. So really what this looks like is y equals, I can split the pieces of this side up like that. I can split them apart and make two fractions out of them. So I'm going to do 9 divided by negative 3, which gives me a negative 3. And then I've got minus 2x, which I could turn into plus a negative 2x. And that way, those negative signs will cancel each other out. Just the negatives will cancel each other out. Nothing else will. So what I'm left with on this side is 2/3, and then I can pull that x out and just tack it onto the end. Now typically when we write an equation like this, we want the x value to come first. So I've got a little bit more rearranging to do. So I'm going to move that positive 2/3 x to the front, and then I'm going to subtract the 3. And this, what we have, is slope-intercept form, which we're going to do next unit. And so when we're working with equations like this, I need it in this form with the x and then the constant last. All right, so number one, we're going to solve for y. So I want everything away from the y. So I'm going to subtract 9x from both sides. And so another way that you can do this from the beginning, the 9x's cancel. I'm left with negative 5y equals, I can go ahead and put that negative 9x first and then just add 10 to that. That's the same thing as 10 minus 9x. But that way just makes it a little bit easier to work with those signs and keep track of everything. Now I'm going to divide both sides by negative 5. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to divide the entire side, by negative 5. But really what I'm doing, I'm going to take each piece and divide it by 5, or negative 5. Okay, so we've got y equals, so negative 9 divided by negative 5. There's nothing that'll do. I can't simplify that fraction any further. But those negatives will cancel each other out. So I can just write 9/5 x. And so when you write it like this, like I have here, 2x over 3, I can pull that x out and just multiply x times 2/3. It represents the same thing, but that's the proper form to write it. And then I've got 10 divided by negative 5, which gives me a negative 2. So instead of doing plus negative 2, I'm just going to subtract 2. All right, on number 2, the first thing that I need to do is to distribute the 15s out. So what I'm going to do, 15 times 1/3, and you can do it in your calculator. 15 times 1/3. gives me a 5. And then the other one was, let's see, 15 times 2/5. So really what I have is 5x plus 6y equals 15 times 4 is 60. Now I could cancel both those 15s, but then I'd be left working with fractions. This way, I don't have to work with fractions. So I'm going to subtract 5x from both sides. So these cancel. I've got 6y equals, I'm just going to go ahead and put negative 5x plus 60. Now what I've got to do is divide by the 6. So I'm going to divide this side by 6, and I'm going to go ahead and just do each piece divided by 6 and save us a step there. So the 6's cancel. Negative 5 over 6 does not simplify anymore. And if you're not sure if it simplifies, type it in your calculator and hit enter. And then 60 divided by 6 just gives me a 10. All right, on the next row, now we're working with formulas, mathematical formulas. So in the formula for volume of a cone, V equals 1/3 pi r squared h. We're going to solve for h. So I want h by itself. So I'm going to multiply both sides of the formula by 3. And the reason I'm doing that is I want to get rid of that 1/3. So I would do 3 times V equals 3 times 1/3 pi r squared h. And so what happens is this 3 cancels out that 1/3, and then I don't have to mess with that fraction anymore. So I'm left with 3v pi r squared h. Okay, so now I need h by itself. So I need to get everything away from h. So h is being multiplied by pi r squared. So I can divide both sides by that whole chunk. And so what I'm left with is 3v over pi r squared equals, this all cancels out, h. Okay, so I'll write it a little bit bigger over here. And typically whatever you're solving for, you write first, so you can just flip the entire equation. All right, so this is circumference. We're going to solve for r. So I need to get 2 pi away from r. 2 pi is being multiplied by r. So I just divide both sides by 2 pi. So I have c divided by 2 pi. 2 pi cancels, and that equals r. So r equals c divided by 2 pi. All right, so here I've got volume formula again. This is for a cylinder. I'm going to solve for r this time. So this one's a little bit trickier. So the first thing I want to do is to get the pi and the h away from that r squared. So I'm going to divide by pi h. So I have volume divided by pi h. The pi's cancel, the h's cancel. So I'm left with r squared. I need r all by itself. So to get rid of a square, an exponent of 2, all you do is square root both sides. And so what happens when you do that? A square root cancels an exponent of 2. So what I'm left with is the square root of v over pi h equals the radius, or if you flip it, radius equals the square root of v divided by pi h. All right, last one here. And so these last ones are scientific formulas. So force is equal to mass times acceleration. Solve for acceleration. So A is acceleration. So all I have to do in this one is divide both sides by m. So you're doing the same process that you do when you solve equations. You just don't have to simplify as much with these. So F equals ma. I'm going to divide both sides by m. So the m's cancel. Force divided by mass equals acceleration, or A equals F divided by m. Oop, sorry, it froze. All right, this is one that we see a lot on test. D equals R times T. Solve for R. So I want to get everything away from R. It's being multiplied by T, so I do the opposite. Just divide both sides by T. So I have D divided by T, T's cancel, equals R, or R equals D divided by T. And then finally, this is the formula to convert from Celsius to Fahrenheit. So my first step in this one, I want to get rid of this. I don't want to distribute that. So what I can do is I can multiply both sides by the reciprocal. So the reciprocal is 9 over 5. So I can multiply C by that. And then I can do 9 over 5 times this whole piece. So you notice I used a different bracket there just to keep straight where I'm at. And so what this does, when I multiply by the reciprocal, it cancels that fraction out for me. So I'm left with 9/5 C equals F minus 32. I want F by itself, so I need to get rid of that 32. I'm going to add it to both sides. And so what I'm going to do, let's see, I can't fit it in there, so I'm going to write my answer here. So I have 9/5 C plus 32. This cancels, equals F. And again, if you want to write it with F first, you can just flip the entire equation.